Hey guys, so Truth of Evolution here. I wanted to make this video as a result of Democrats losing the election to Donald Trump in the recent presidential election. I'm a moderate Democrat, so I think it's important for our side to analyze the reasons for the loss and to make a bit of a course correction. I'm not going to go into all the reasons for why we lost. I want to discuss at least some of them, but I think the solution to one of them, the major reason why we lost, lies with you, okay, and the viewers, and that is the reason why I am making this video. I hope it helps at least some of us out there, reaches some people, and it makes a small difference. I can hope. So there are many reasons why we lost. Like I said, I think inflation played a huge part. Of course, a lot of the reason why people vote is their pocketbooks, and I don't think people who do this are necessarily like evil, for voting for Donald Trump. A lot of them voted for Biden or Obama in the past. So they're not immoral in any way. They are looking at their pocketbooks and what their value is. And I think we should have done more to address this issue. Other things included the fact that Biden should not have ran for a second term. He embarrassed himself. He undermined the party. He led to increased confusion. His debate performance was poor. I don't think Afghanistan helped. I don't think the way we addressed the Israel-Palestine issue helped. But I think the biggest reason why Democrats lost is misinformation. And again, this is why I'm making the video. And I hope to address this issue. I hope to address some solutions. I hope it makes a bit of a difference. So there's a lot of misinformation out there for a couple of different reasons. One is there is intentional misinformation from and disinformation from Republican, conservative, AstroTurf, billionaire and millionaires who fund talking heads like Ben Shapiro and Charlie Kirk to debate sleepy college students and make viral videos, and so that it seems like, oh, these are the correct values because these guys school some college students, right? And so that's in my opinion an intentional effort made to attack democratic values and liberal values. Um, the unintentional part of it is that YouTube and Facebook, which are not necessarily partisan, have an algorithm where you watch the same sort of videos over and over again. So if you're watching a Charlie Kirk video, a Ben Shapiro video might get recommended, or another conservative video might get recommended. You just keep going down the rabbit hole of this echo chamber where you're watching the same videos over and over again. I think the best way to combat this, even though it's very, very hard to fight, right? Like we've got millions of dollars and algorithms of massive social media corporations that we're fighting against. It's very hard to do this. But I think the best way to fight this is with one-on-one personal engagement. You, the viewer, need to engage personally with people, either with your coworkers or with your family members or with your friends, or on social media. And my hope is I can teach you how to do that with this video. Okay. Why is this important? Why is it important for you to do this? Well, it's important. Like the reason why this is a solution to this, to the millions of dollars that these conservative astroturfs are putting into this. The reason why this is important, the reason why this works, is that those videos that Charlie Kirk puts out and Ben Shapiro puts out, the viewer cannot engage with them, right? You cannot ask Ben Shapiro questions. You cannot ask Charlie Kirk questions, right? They give a superficial argument in the video, and the viewer cannot engage with this. That's an advantage you have when you're directly talking to a person, is you can ask questions, you can engage with the conversation, so they don't have just a superficial view, but they have a nuanced view. You can break past these superficial arguments and get to the meat of the issues and possibly change somebody's mind. Okay, so Now, I think it's also, there are other strategies that can be done, like politicians should be acting better, they should have better policies, they should be addressing their issues, we should have our liberal media should be doing it the right thing, whatever. There are all these certain things, but I cannot control that. This is something I can control, right? And that's why I'm putting this video out. Now, I've had this discussion with multiple family members who are liberal. They're upset, and friends, of course, and they're upset about Donald Trump winning. But I asked them, have you ever debated any of these conservatives who are voting against your beliefs? And almost all the time, people don't debate. And the reasoning I get is like, oh, people don't change their minds. It's impossible to change somebody's mind, and that's, in my opinion, is just not true. Think about this. Have you never changed your mind? Right? Of course not. You've changed your mind in the past. We all change your minds on issues. But how do you do it? That's the question. Do you change your mind in the middle of a debate or at the end of a debate where you're trying to win, on an issue? Most of the time, people don't, right? Most of the time, the way we change our minds is we have multiple engagements, multiple discussions with different people, family members, coworkers, and you address the issue over and over again with different people, and then you realize you put that information together, and privately is what happens usually. Privately, in your own safe space, in your own mind, you make the decision to change your mind on a particular issue, and then you come out in public with this new position, right? Most of the time, right? Because a lot of times you don't have the humility to say I'm wrong in public, right? Most of the time, people don't have that ability to do that. So, but people do change their minds. And a famous example of this, why I believe that people can change their mind, is the issue of gay marriage. In the early 2000s, the majority of Americans did not believe that gay marriage should be legal. However, after people publicly, famous people started coming out publicly, family members started coming out, friends, co-workers, neighbors, they all started addressing this issue, putting a human face on the issue, and having multiple discussions with people who did not agree with gay marriage. People started changing their minds. The polls show this very clearly, and now a majority of the American population believes that gay marriage should be legal. So similarly, I think that these echo chambers, with Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro, they demonize liberals, they demonize trans people, they demonize feminists. But we're scientists, we're doctors, we're your neighbors, we're your family members, we're your friends. So having that personal discussion will break through these sort of caricatures that these astroturf political agendas put up. And I think that's why this was a successful strategy. Now, here's the thing. I will concede that it is really, really hard to change somebody's mind, right? I'm not saying it's easy. I understand that it's hard, and I understand that it's rare. But try to understand what the goal here is, okay? The goal here is not to change the mind of every single conservative that you meet. The goal here is to win elections so we can implement policies that actually help people. And how do we do that? Well, let's look back at what happened. The election was very, very close. The last few elections have been very, very close. So we don't need to change every single conservative person's mind. Even if we change the mind of 10% of Republicans who voted for Trump, and now they're voting for Democrats, it would be a landslide victory in the near future for Democrats. So if we change our goal, our mindset, to changing the minds of 10 to 15% of the people that we talk to, that is entirely achievable. Second thing is, a victory doesn't have to be this total crushing and some in debate and humiliation in public and all this other stuff. That happens sometimes, but very rarely does that happen where somebody engages in debate and completely obliterates them. Instead, it's still a victory if you introduce nuance to an issue and it sort of uh, tamps a conservative's view on the issue. So they're not as emboldened. They hesitate a little bit. They don't believe in the issue as much as they used to. They're not as vocal about it. So they're not going to spread the issue in the public sphere as much anymore because they're not as confident about the issue themselves internally. Even if they still believe it, even if they have not changed their mind, they may not be as confident on the issue anymore. And that's still a victory because now their ideas are not spreading in the public sphere as much, whereas liberal ideas are. Third thing is, if you've done enough to create doubt where they're a former Republican is no longer voting for the Republican Party, that's still a victory. So there are many levels of victory. You don't have to completely change somebody's mind for it to be a victory for the discussion. Okay. Now, hopefully, I convince you that debating people works and that it's important to do. Now, the issue is, how do you go about doing it? And what is the strategy? And there is a strategy to do this right. A lot of times debates end up muddled, they end up confused, you end up confused, the other person ends up confused, nobody knows what the heck happened, or stuff, and it gets very frustrating. So I have a particular strategy that I use, which helps me control the debate, helps me figure out where the direction of the debate is going. Okay, and the way I do this is I ask directed questions. Right, I don't make a statement. Okay, I don't say, for example, like I don't say doctors believe that. Doctors overwhelmingly believe in trans affirmation. I don't say that. I say doctors overwhelmingly believe in trans affirmation. Do you agree? Okay, now it's a yes or no question. So ask directed question and try to make them yes or no questions. Because now the person has two choices. They can answer, yes, I agree with the scientists, or no, I don't agree with the scientists. And either direction, it allows me to pursue that conversation further. Okay. Now, the other reason, so it gives me control over the conversation. I know where the direction of the conversation is going. I can control the direction of the conversation. And I ask my next question and my next question, which I already have prepared ahead of time. Okay. So that's one thing that's really important. Asking directed questions is important. Directed questions also help because they sort of help you figure out when somebody is losing control of the conversation. And a lot of times people don't do this intentionally. When we're not an expert in debating, we sort of change the topic and move on from topic A to topic B unconsciously, and we sort of don't even realize we're doing it, and by the end you started on topic A and you ended up on topic Z, and you didn't really have a real discussion about anything after talking for an hour, right? So in order to avoid that, a directed question makes it easier, implants the idea that, hey, there's a question I need to answer. So if it's not answered, both you and the person you're talking to, both of you can easily understand that the question was not answered, right? So if you ask a question and they change the topic, you could always be like, hey, that's really great, but I noticed you didn't answer the question. Can you please address the topic so we could continue in this direction, because we're changing the subject and moving on to a different issue. If they feel uncomfortable, be like, okay, you don't want to answer this question, we can move on, but I just want to point out that you didn't answer this issue, and I think that you should think about it a little bit further. If you're not comfortable answering it, that's totally fine. We can move on. But I want to point that out, that you were unable to answer it, and I think it'd be good for you to think about this further, right? They're unable to answer it, but if they're able to answer it, they have choices. Try to give them choices and answer the question so that you can direct the conversation, and that both of you are on the same page as to where the conversation is heading. Okay. The second thing is to not address the conversation at your level. It's to address it at their level and their beliefs and their values. Okay. So it's important, again, in the beginning of the conversation, to set guidelines and ask questions so that you can get to the heart of the issue, right? So, for example, let's say that I'm having a discussion on trans rights, trans affirmation, and I say that majority of America's doctors overwhelmingly support trans affirmation. Well, then they cannot respond with, yeah, but this study shows this. Yeah, but did you know that doctors can be corrupt, and da 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 and da da da, and then it just goes on and on. You don't have any direction of the conversation. Before you even start going into all these details, I'd be like, hey, I'm happy to address this with you, but I just want to ask you a question first. Do you believe in the accuracy of scientific studies, or do you not believe in the accuracy of scientific studies and the scientific community? You trust the scientific community? Okay, could ask that question. Do you trust the scientific community? If they say I trust the scientific community, then it makes sense for you to be like, hey, look at this. American Medical Association made this statement where they support trans affirmation. If they say they don't trust the scientific community, then there's no point in giving that, the American Medical Association statement, right? So you're wasting your time. You're losing direction of the conversation. You're losing control. So setting up that background, do you trust in the scientific community is important, because now, let's say they don't trust in the scientific community, we're no longer having a discussion about trans issues, right? Now we're having a discussion on what, should we trust the scientific community, right? That's a totally separate issue, but it's more important. It's more, not important, but it's more to the base of things. Once we get to the idea of should we trust them, then we can argue about trans rights and vaccines and all this other stuff, all these other issues that come up, as a result of, climate change, or these are all the underlying issue for a lot of people is distrust of the scientific community. Okay, so but if they say in the beginning, hey, yeah, of course I trust the scientific community, and you bring up the AMA study, now they're stuck, right? Either they have to now uh, pick that, I no longer trust the scientific community, or they have to say, I no longer believe that uh, 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 trans affirmation is wrong, right? They have to pick one thing that they choose to give up, right? Because you've already established ahead of time that you're going down this direction. That makes any sense, right? If you don't establish that, if they don't, if they once they've already said yes, I trust the scientific community, now you got them in where they have to pick, they have to lose on one issue or the other, right? But if you don't have that established ahead of time, they can easily just change it, be like, oh, I don't trust the science. You haven't really gotten anywhere. Okay, if that makes any sense. Okay, so those are all really important things. Another important thing is to figure out whether you want to have the conversation in private or in public. If you really, in my opinion, if you trust the person or if they trust you, it's good to have the conversation in private, because then you can have an honest discussion. You're not trying to shame them. On the other hand, if this is somebody you don't trust, or they're clearly trying to school you or destroy you, it's better to have that conversation in public, because once they start losing, they start getting angry and nasty, and that's not the discussion you want to be having. So once they start doing that in public, you can point out, look at this attitude of this guy. Once he starts losing, you're trying to appeal to the rest of the public, other people who are there. Once he starts losing, he starts getting nasty, and then you're pointing that out to other people, and that sort of calms them down. They start to realize, oh no, I'm losing the public here, and they start backing off their nasty behavior. Okay, so I want to give a couple of examples here about how this some examples of how this the direction of a certain conversation can go, right? So one thing is I had a friend who is a libertarian, and he this was during the time of the COVID vaccine, COVID, and the vaccine just came out, and he was against mandates, and he was like, oh, I don't believe in mandates, and you can't tell me what to do, and that kind of stuff. So I hate it when the government forces me to do things, and da 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 da, right? So I'm like, okay, you know, but what do you think about the seatbelt mandate? Right, so I pitted his view on his seatbelts, because he was my friend, like I knew he was putting a seatbelt on every day, So it's seatbelt mandate versus vaccine mandate, and I pitted one view against the other that I knew he held both views, right? And he was like, and, he struggled with this, like, should I be against the seatbelt mandate? But people will die, but da 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 da, and he struggled. You could see him struggling. So I just let it go. Okay, I just want you to think about this. So an important thing is, once they reach the space of cognitive dissonance and they're starting to wrestle with two opposing ideas that don't make sense in their head, let it be. Don't try to destroy them. Just let them sort of think about it, and let them come out in private. Think about it and privately, and then come out in public later with a new point of view, hopefully. So that worked in that particular situation, bringing up the seatbelt mandate. Right, that worked in that situation. In another situation, I was having a discussion with a patient, and he was like, it's a similar thing. I'm a libertarian. I don't believe in government mandates. The government shouldn't tell me what to do, blah, 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 blah. And then I was like, hey, what about the seatbelt mandate? What do you think about that? Right? And he was like, well, the thing about seatbelts is we know that they work. We know that they save lives. We don't know if the vaccine saves lives, right? So I made a mistake there, right? I didn't set myself up for the success, like I just went into the seatbelt mandate, What I should have asked is, does it matter to you uh, if the vaccine saves lives, or if saving lives is important? Like I should have probably like set myself up for this, because if he said it is important, and we haven't done it yet, then I'm that's a different conversation. Then I wouldn't have brought up the seatbelt mandate, right? Like my friend, he didn't care, whether it saved lives or not, right? Like this guy was against mandates as long as there's no proof that it saves lives, right? And my other friend was against mandates, period. So that's why the seatbelt conversation worked, right? Because he was against all mandates. Doesn't matter if they're effective or not, right? If they're helping to save lives, right? That he's against all mandates. So that was effective. This guy, he is in favor of mandates as long as you can prove that it saves lives. Now, I had two choices here. One is I could have gone into the tedious details of scientific studies and which showed whether vaccines saved lives, and and I didn't feel like doing that. Instead, what I did was I took that concept that he's in favor of mandates as long as they save lives, and pitted it against himself. And the example I chose was clothing, right? So laws in America is you have to wear clothes out in public. Does it save lives? No, right? Like wearing clothing is not going to stop you from having fewer car accidents or make you less, whatever. It does. There's no real like link for it to save lives. We do it because it's a cultural norm, right? So I pitted his idea that he's in favor of mandates as long as they save lives, and he's not in favor of mandates when there's no proof that that they save lives, versus this mandate where there's no proof that it saves lives, which is clothing, right? So, and I was like, what about clothing? There's no proof that it saves lives. Why are you in favor of that mandate? Why are you wearing clothes right now? Why aren't you arguing against clothing mandates? And he was like, like, and then the cognitive dissonance got to him. He got his vaccines, okay, later. But after a few discussions, it wasn't that he didn't do it at that visit. But he thought about it, like you could see it like affecting him, right? So that's the point, right? Like so the seatbelt analogy worked for one person because he was against all mandates, right, including potentially seatbelts, right? And it didn't work in the other person because he was in favor of some mandates. It's logically consistent, when he was in favor of seatbelts and not in favor of the vaccines. But he's logically inconsistent in being in favor of clothing mandates and not being in favor of the COVID mandate. That makes any sense. Okay, so you have to pit them against their own beliefs and their own values. You have to meet them where they are at. Okay, so another couple of examples, right? I was having a debate about, and this is just for fun, for you guys just to think of ideas, I can give you more examples, but one thing, abortion, right? Abortion is a big one, right? I really don't like it when liberals argue, oh, I don't believe life begins in conception, and then the pro-life person's like, life begins at conception, and you're not really getting anywhere, right? You're not convincing anyone of anything, but they're both like basically equal opinions, right? Like it doesn't matter you're not convincing the other person of anything, right? You have to again meet them where they are, right? So one thing is, again, I might set up the stage for my impending victory this way, okay? I may say, would you agree that regardless of when life starts, we could have a disagreement on that, that's fine. It's important for both of us that in the end, the number of abortions should decrease, right? So regardless, we both should be able to agree that decreasing abortions is important, right? Most people would agree with that, right? So now I'm setting myself up. Most of the time people are like, yeah, of course, decreasing abortions is really, really important. We got to do what it takes to decrease abortion. I'm like, are you willing to do what it takes to decrease abortions? I ask them, are you willing to do what it takes to decrease abortions? I'm setting myself up, okay? So, and if they say yes, then I can continue the conversation. I can show them studies which show that making abortion legal, increasing access to contraceptives, increasing thorough, comprehensive sex education decreases abortions. Now, they've already conceded that they're willing to do what it takes to decrease abortions, right? So they've set themselves up with this. Okay, so now again, if they believe in the scientific method, they believe in science, then they have no choice but to agree or admit they were wrong to begin with. Okay, when they said that they would do anything to decrease abortions. Okay, so now again, there's a caveat that they need to believe in the scientific method and science, right? So I'll get to that in a second. Now, they may say that, oh, I don't care I'm not here because I think it's important to decrease abortions, right? So I don't need to go into studies anymore, right? Like, I don't need to show that making abortion legal decreases abortion. They probably already know this. That's why they would say this. Decreasing abortion is not important to me. I just want to say that I'm pro-life. But that doesn't sound very good, right? Like, you're saying that you care about life, but you're not doing what it takes to decrease what you're saying is murder. Like, that doesn't sound good. That doesn't look good. So I don't even need to prove anything else. Now we're having a discussion about, is it hypocritical for you to say something like that? Is it self-righteous? And I would point that out to if there's other people that, like, note this guy. He's saying he cares about life, but he's not willing to do anything to save lives. He's not willing to do anything about it. And then I don't even know how to discuss studies. I've already won that debate. If they say that he doesn't care about decreasing abortions, right? If he says he cares about decreasing abortions, then I can move in that direction. Again, there's a caveat that they need to accept that the scientific method and everything, and I'll go into what to do when they don't. But but I'll do that in a little bit. Another thing you can do is talk about IVF, and again, I'll start off setting up the stage by asking them, do you believe IVF is a good thing? Do you believe that IVF should be legal? If they say yes, okay, then you point out that IVF requires embryos to be destroyed. So if you believe that life begins at conception, then you're saying that it's okay to destroy life in IVF. So now again, they're stuck. They either have to say that they're wrong when they previously believed in IVF, or that they're wrong in believing that life starts in conception. Either way, they have to concede some sort of loss. Okay, so that's why you set yourself up with those sort of conversations. Okay, so most people believe in IVF, so you're peeling away a lot of people from the pro-life movement, or not the pro-life movement necessarily, but people who believe in that life begins at conception. So when you insert that into the dialogue, now, let's say that they don't believe in the scientific method, right? Or they believe that scientists are liars or whatever, right? So that's a big problem and big issue in society, right? But it's a major reason why there's so much misinformation. So I actually had this one discussion with a microbiology PhD student. He randomly brought up in a conversation that climate change is a hoax. Okay, man-made climate change is a hoax, and you would think that debating somebody with the scientific, in a scientific degree, it gets harder, right? Like, you would get harder, but it actually gets easier because, again, you're pitting themselves against their belief in the scientific method. Okay, so this is the way I had the conversation. I was like, okay, so why do you believe that climate change is a hoax? There are all these studies showing this, right? So of course he can't argue against the study. So what he says, the quality of the studies, we're both in the same level. We're both students at the time and know how to look at studies. So he couldn't argue about the quality of the studies. He knows the quality are good. So basically what he said is like, oh, they're getting money from all these places, and they need to show that man-made climate change is real in order to keep getting all these grants. Okay, I'm like, okay, that's fine, and so that's why they're liars. But isn't that true about microbiology too? Don't people in microbiology get grants from the same places, and NIH, and everything else? He was like, yeah, and then I was like, so does that mean that microbiologists are liars too? And then he was like, and then you could see him sort of like thinking about it. He's like, yeah. He was like, yeah, I think microbiology it can have lies too. Some microbiologists can lie too. Say something like that. He said a very nuanced statement. I'm like, whoa, wait a second. You just told me the entire field of man-made climate change is a lie, but you're telling me only a few microbiologists are liars, even though they're both getting money from the same places. Shouldn't it be that the entire field of microbiology is a lie? It's like, whoa, no, because they're getting money from certain places. I'm like, no, we just agreed that they're both getting money from the same places. So why is it that only some microbiologists are liars, but almost all climate change scientists are liars? Can you equalize the logic for me? What's the difference between the two? Again, a directed question. What's the difference? You're telling me they're both getting money, but one is more corrupt than the other. Why? He couldn't answer the question. Because if he accepted that microbiology was a lie, he's wasting his life doing a microbiology PhD, right? So honestly, the more educated the person, the easier it is to defeat them on these sort of conversations, because you're pitting themselves against themselves, their own identity as a scientist, right? He's taking money from NIH, right? And he's attacking other people for taking money from NIH. Buddy, doesn't that mean you're a liar? So again, doesn't that mean you're a liar? I don't say you're a liar. Doesn't that mean? So I'm pitting his own logic against himself. So I'm not accusing him of anything. I'm just asking him to, equalize his own logic, settle the cognitive dissonance. Okay, so it's actually easier to do that. This one time I was having a conversation, no, but again, it becomes easier when you're having a conversation with somebody who's a scientist, because you already know, you already accept the scientific method, right? So it's actually easier. One time I had a discussion with somebody who is not very familiar with the scientific method, and they were like, "Oh, you can't trust the science. You can't trust scientists. You can't." And I was having a discussion about initially about insurance, health insurance, and how universal healthcare is really good. But they were like way out there. They're like, "Oh, scientists are liars. You can't trust doctors." Blah 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 blah. So they're doing all this, and I was like, "There's no point in us discussing something as complicated as whether." Health insurance works, which types of health insurance works, because we don't even agree about basic stuff. I'm like, do you believe the earth is flat, or do you believe the earth is round? You know? So I changed the subject to that, because I'm like, I want to see where we agree. Is what I said, like, what makes, and they're like, oh, I believe the world is round. I know they're flat earthers, but like in this situation, luckily the person believed the earth is round. I'm like, okay, so then explain to me why you believe the scientists when they tell you the earth is round. You don't believe the scientists when they tell you about, these other issues. Like, you can't have it both ways, right? Again, I'm pitting themselves against themselves, and they're like, there's a lot of evidence. I'm like, actually, if you watch YouTube videos, there are a lot of flat earthers who call scientists liars, just like you're calling scientists liars. So what's the difference between you and a flat earther? Right? Again, a directed question. What's the difference between you and a flat earther? Now, they want to distinguish. They're not. They know that flat earthers are crazy. They want to seem reasonable. So they want to distinguish themselves. But anytime they say, "Oh, the difference is that we have facts on our side," well, that's what the flat earthers are saying. Like, oh, you believe that your facts that don't agree with you, because the scientific consensus, they're full of liars. So do these guys. So, like, what's the difference? And I just keep picking at, trying to equalize them with flat earthers. So I'm not trying to go through the studies. I'm not trying to teach them about the scientific method. I'm not wasting my time doing that stuff. I'm basically just pitting themselves against themselves. And that really messed this person up, because they're like, oh, what's the difference between me and flat earther? Like, they couldn't figure out what the difference between them and flat earther was. Right? So I think these are some examples. You can have fun with these sort of discussions. You can lead the discussion where you want it to go, and you have a plan ahead of time, and it leads to victory in a lot of different ways a lot of the time. So let me know if this was helpful for you guys. If you want me to do anything else, let me know. Thanks.